Meeting to order. Okay, welcome everyone. We're glad to have you tonight. This is the regular meeting of ANC 34G. I'm Randy Speck. I'm the chair of the commission. I represent an area called my single member district is ANC 3G03, and that includes the area that's between Nebraska and Utah and Broad Branch, basically. I'm going to give a little bit more description tonight than I usually do about the ANC, because we've discovered that there are a lot of people who just don't know, this is your first ANC meeting, you don't know what the ANC is and what we do. So I'm going to give a little bit of description of that. Each of the commissioners is elected every 2 years. We serve a 2-year term. This is a non-paid position. We're purely volunteers. We represent about 2,000 people, each of us, so that the whole commission with 7 commissioners, we represent in the area of Chevy Chase, Barnaby Woods, and Hawthorne, we represent about 15,000 people total. We advise the city agencies about various issues, really any issue that comes up before a city agency or the DC Council or the mayor. Is a legitimate subject for us to give them advice on. And so we do that through our meetings. We vote on resolutions at our meeting to address those kinds of issues and advise the council. They are not obligated to follow our advice. We are an advisory neighborhood commission, which means we don't have any real power ourselves to decide anything. All we can do is recommend to the agency. They are required to give us what's called great weight, so they've got to consider our arguments, but they don't necessarily have to follow them. We meet every second and fourth Monday, every month except August. We, as I said, we basically advise the council. A lot of the things that we do, you don't ever see, because we do that behind the scenes during the week. We address a lot of individual residents' problems during the week. We've had a lot of emails among ourselves and with other agencies of the district government or with residents. And so we spend a whole lot of time on this, even though it's a volunteer position. All of us are hopefully trying to make the district a little bit better and a little bit more responsive to its residents. I want to introduce 2 other people in our group too. Stephanie Van Pelt is our office manager, and Stephanie has been with us now for a couple of years. A year and some. And so she takes care of a lot of the administrative work. And then Alan Beach is a former commissioner. We consider him a commissioner emeritus. He served on the commission for decades and lived in the neighborhood. He's now moved away, but he still comes back and helps us, and we really appreciate that. They will assist us during the meeting. They will sometimes be giving us materials or organizing materials for us. And if need be, they will act as timekeepers if we need to keep time to make sure that we cover all the issues that we have to cover tonight. Before I begin to describe the meeting itself, let's introduce each of the commissioners. And Jerry, you want to start tonight?
I'm Jerry Mallitz. I represent 3G05. That's the area from Chevy Chase Circle down Connecticut to about Military and across to Broad Branch.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Commissioner Shanda Tuck-Garfield, and I represent ANC 34G02, and I'm on the part of the district that's closest to Oregon Avenue in Nebraska. It includes St. John's College High School, Nolan Retirement Community, and Central. Thank you for coming this evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Abraham Clayman, and I represent ANC 34G01, and that single member district is Hawthorne and part of Barnaby Woods.
Okay, we have 4 commissioners here. That's enough to have a quorum. We're missing 3 commissioners who are either away tonight or 1 commissioner is ill tonight. but we can still nevertheless conduct business and pass resolutions and do whatever else we need to do. Just to make sure the meetings run smoothly, some time ago we adopted a number of norms about how the meeting should be conducted. And I just want to reiterate those tonight. We have sometimes not followed them as closely as we should have, but I'll just run through those quickly. They're attached at the end of the agenda. You can see all of those norms. But first, speakers who are addressing the group need to come to the podium. And the reason for that is twofold. One is to make sure that we can all hear you. You'll be on the audio system, but also so that you can be on the video as well, so that any of the people watching the video, all of our meetings are video recorded, and then will be put up on YouTube, usually the following day. And so we want to make sure that anyone watching the video can identify who the speaker is. And when you're speaking to, you need to identify yourself, give your name and your address, preferably. Participants need to speak one at a time. You need to be recognized by the chair, and so we need to avoid speaking over each other. That's not good for understanding what's going on or for our video. Meetings are run according to our agenda, and we try to keep closely to that time, to the times that are specified in the agenda. Now, in some instances, the subject matter is going to take longer than we've allocated for it, and so I will make a decision as we go along whether we get more time or less time to a particular item. If there's as I mentioned earlier, if there's a constraint on time and we don't have enough time for all of the speakers to speak as long as they might like to, we sometimes have to limit the time, in which case we'll have a timekeeper who will tell you when your time is up. After a presenter, tonight we're going to have a couple of presentations. After those presenters have made their presentation, we're going to have the commissioners ask questions first, and then we'll open it up to questions from the community. Every resident will have an opportunity to be heard once before we allow anybody else to speak twice. And so really we want to make sure everyone gets an opportunity to speak. Sometimes there are going to be some issues that generate strong emotions. We try to keep the tone of our meetings very calm and respectful. And so we ask everyone to at least try to restrain themselves. And if we stray from these norms at some point, my commissioners will remind me and we'll go back to them and make sure that we're following those norms. Okay, we also have a sign-up sheet in the back for anyone who wishes to speak on a particular topic. We've organized it by topic so that you can identify which subject matter you'd like to speak on. Now, after a portion of the agenda, after the community announcements, we'll collect that sign-up sheet and we'll try to follow that as we go through the rest of the meeting. Okay, as you all have a copy of the agenda, this is an agenda that's usually prepared a week in advance and is posted on our website and on the Chevy Chase listserv and various other listservs around town. And we try to follow that as closely as we can. But the first thing we need to do is adopt the agenda. And are there any modifications or changes that need to be made in the agenda? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the agenda? 4-0. Okay, commissioner announcements first. There's a momentous hearing coming up in Congress this month that we all ought to be aware of. On July 24th, the House Oversight Committee will hold hearings on H.R. 51, which is the D.C. statehood bill. And we all ought to take a great interest in this, and we ought to try to promote it and support it. There are a number of ways that we can do that. One thing is it's going to be important for a lot of people to show up at the hearing room at the the overflow rooms, and to make sure that Congress recognizes that this is something that DC supports very strongly. There's also a meeting that will be held by DC for Democracy. This is their monthly meeting. It's going to be at the Eaton Hotel, and there's going to be a rally there to support statehood, and that's on, I don't have it on my notes, but I believe that's January 10th, or July 10th. I believe it's 6:30. More information is available at their website, and I'll have a link to that on our minutes. Then a couple of items from previous meetings. DC Water construction has been going on for some time on 30th Street. We had a long meeting about that at our June 24th meeting. The commission agreed after that meeting that it would join DC Water's request to extend the work hours, which had previously been 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we agreed that they could go from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And that was with really the support of all the people on that block, on that 3 or 4 blocks of 30th Street. After subsequent communications with the director of DDOT's Public Space Administration, Washington Gas, and with me, the director approved extended hours that were only from 7:30 a.m. until 7 p.m. So that's the hours that they will be authorized to work. The last announcement I have is the Lafayette Recreation Center modernization meeting. That's going to be 6:30 on July 10th here in the community center, and it will discuss the design, the final design of the Lafayette Recreation Center modernization. Okay, Abe, do you have any other announcements?
Good evening. I have a couple announcements about my favorite topic, road construction, in our ANC. So let's see. Beach Drive is still moving ahead on schedule, and the National Park Service anticipates completing that project this fall, and anticipates that the road will reopen this fall. Bingham Drive, which we've got some questions about off of Oregon, will remain closed between Oregon and Beach until the rehab project is complete. The paved trails are open for pedestrians and cyclists. Last week, DC Water, the National Park Service, and the District Department of Energy and the Environment agreed on a restoration plan for the roadway. It will be restored from curb to curb. The next phase is to design and improve that design. Obviously, there has to be a fair amount of coordination between a few agencies, which we all know can take a long time. DC Water is pushing for an expedited process and really hopes and expects to have the roadway completed by the time that Beach Drive reopens. I expect to have another update at the end of the month. And some representatives from DC Water wanted to say this, and I would echo it too. Just thank you to everyone who's been patient as the various agencies have come together to repave and reopen this road, and hopefully it will be reopened this fall.
Yes, thank you. As you may remember, my announcement tonight is regarding the Oxford House Moreland Street issue. As you may know, and some of you may not, quick background piece on it is that our commission has attended 3 meetings. We've held 2 of our own regarding this issue, and one in conjunction with Councilmember Todd. We have gotten an update today, and I wanted to read that to the community so that you would know what is going on with the issue currently. Basically, at our June 24th, 2019 meeting, the Commission approved a resolution advising DCRA to grant Oxford House's currently pending request for reasonable accommodation to occupy 1 house by up to 10 unrelated persons. DCRA had advised the Commission that it could not defer the decision as we requested until beyond the July 5th, 2019 date. On July 3rd, however, DCRA's zoning administrator informed Oxford House that it was not able to approve the request and needs additional information to, quote, demonstrate the nexus between the occupant's disability and reasonable accommodation for occupants beyond 6 unrelated individuals individuals constituting a household. Our ANC was informed of this today, and probably a couple of hours before the meeting. As you know, the ANC is your community representative, and we will continue to monitor that issue, and if we have any updates at our next meeting, we'll apprise you of it. As you know, this is an ongoing issue for our community, and we also just want to thank all the residents who come out and attended all 3 meetings, some for, some against. That's democracy, and we appreciate that, and we'll continue to move forward and update you. Thank you very much.
I have no announcements.
Okay. Any community announcements? I know the mayor's representative is here. Yes, Gabrielle?
Good evening, everyone. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Gabrielle Priest, and I am one of the Ward 4 liaisons in the mayor's office. My partner's name is Keyshawn Harris. I represent ANC's 4A and 4C, and he represents 4B and 4D, and we share 3-4G, but I do attend this meeting. So we are mostly, for those of you who don't know, we are the connection to the community, to their government. We help navigate the resources that we have, and we help kind of get responses from agencies as well. Fortunately, I do have cards now, so I don't have to give my contact information. So therefore, if you would like my contact information, feel free to approach me, and I will give you one of my freshly printed cards. I'm very excited about it. I don't have too many announcements today, different from last month. But all that we do have to say is that Mokers spent the day today driving around our respective wards looking for fallen trees and flooding streets. If anybody has noticed any fallen trees or streets that are experiencing standing water, so please let me know so we can get that resolved as quickly as possible. That is the only thing that I have. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to take them now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have anybody here from Councilmember Shea's office, Councilmember Todd's office? They're neglecting this now. Okay. Any other community announcements anyone wants to make? Okay, we'll go into our substantive agenda. The first item is discussion and possible vote on Class C liquor license renewals for Arugula, which is now the Capital Crab and Seafood. Is Tim Walsh here? I didn't see him. Well, we'll leave this item on the agenda and come to it later if Tim comes in. We're just about on time when we should be taking this up. We'll put that off until later. Okay, the next item is a presentation by the Office of Campaign Finance on the district's new public funding program that the Office of Campaign Finance administers to qualified candidates. Okay, and I've been contacted by Dolores Ramsey. I guess you're here in her stead.
Yes, I'm here on behalf of Office of Campaign Finance.
Okay, could you introduce yourself then?
Yes, I will. My name is Eddie Fair. My colleague here is Paul Awuma. We are here to introduce the fair election program to your community. The fair election program, as you may all know, is something the DC government has started to do to help community members who are interested in politics to be able to participate. As you may all know, it's been money politics lately. A little man with good ideas have been sidelined for some time now. So the program is to enable anybody interested to participate.
Closer to the microphone.
Okay.
The microphone.
To participate, and help will very much come from the DC government. So what we do here is the DC government is ready to match any voluntary contribution a candidate or a candidate to be will contribute 5 to 1. So for instance, if let's say somebody is interested in running for the office of mayor, And the least that person, or the maximum that person can contribute from an individual DC resident is $200. If he or she get that $200, up to a number of 1,000 people, the government will match that contribution by 5. So in this case, 200 will go as much as 1,200. You know, and the offices that are open for that privilege is the mayor, attorney general, council members, both at large and regular. At large, including State Board of Education at large, as well as our regular college ward council members. Yeah. So what we are here to do today is to mention it once again. Instead of standing here and trying to answer every question, which I might not be able to do all in this short time, we have our website. You go to ocl.dc.gov. Every information that you may want about those programs. We talk about when, let's say, a candidate apply and qualify. There's something we call a base payment. We'll give you some money to set the ball rolling for you to be able to, canvass and do more of the soliciting for contributions here and there. So we are not going to leave you to dry. Like we say, come on, and immediately you come on, it's like you're on your own. That's not the process this time. The government is ready to help you to the T so that you can also participate in democracy of our beautiful city. So with that said, I will leave it for questions, if any.
I have one question. Are there going to be hard limits on how much can be contributed to the mayor's race, for instance, so that it can't be more than, an individual can't contribute more than?
Exactly. The limit for an individual to contribute towards the mayor's race is 200. And this can only be matched by a DC resident's contribution. You may end up getting contribution from out of state, but those contributions will not be matched. You can only match those that comes from DC residents.
Well, if the mayor, right now, for instance, the limitation on contribution to the mayor is $2,500.
That's right.
Does that mean that if someone gave the mayor $2,500,
well,
only $200 would be toward matching?
I know what is that. We have the two programs, the old program, known as the traditional program, is still going to be out there.
Okay.
You can choose to go with that or with this fair election program. The moment you opt to go with the fair election program, you'll be limited to the rules of the fair election. Those who have good backing and still believe you can get big money, can still go with the old process, and there's no problem with that. But you can only do one. You either go for the old system or the new one. Once you let go with the new one, you play by the rules, which is only 200. That will be matched if the contributor is a DC resident. However, you still have every right to get donations from other places, states, whatever you, but those will not be matched. And for a mayoral role or race, you can only take contribution for DC residents up to 1,000 of them to qualify for the whole process.
That does seem to me to be a problem because, at the federal level, they have a matching program like that for the president, but nobody takes it because they can't get enough money that way. The monetary requirements are much larger.
Yeah.
So is there an expectation that candidates will take the new regime, or that most candidates are still going to do it the old way?
Well, as you may already know, we have that two groups of candidates. There are some who are well positioned, well connected, who still have that corporate money coming in. But what we are trying to do, or what DC government is trying to do, is encourage the little one. So with that, you may run, may not be successful, but you put yourself out there for next time. And this is just to encourage them to speak out, not to be scared of, oh, I don't have money. You have the same platform as the big money, contributors coming into it.
So you still have to worry about the big money.
Oh yeah, definitely, they are attractive or no. But all the same, we can do something with this. And I can tell you, a few people have already altered and registered and all that, so it's coming up.
Yeah, I was just wondering, does it include all elected officials such as your local ANC candidates?
That's the south side, listener.
Yeah.
Now, ANC positions are not part of it. But you still have the right to run for any other position if you decide to be as an ANC member.
Now, I wonder mainly because a number of positions are contested, and sometimes the candidates have to put forth their own money out of their pocket to, do flyers and different things, so.
Yeah, I mean, we juggle this around, and up to now, we do not have a good answer as to why ANC is not included. Maybe with time and with your voice coming from the background, it will be considered one day, but for now, it's not part of the position.
So I just want to get this straight. So if somebody opts to be under the old system,
Okay.
they can get as many contributions as they want, up to $2,500 apiece, both within DC and out of DC.
Correct.
Okay. If somebody chooses to go into the new system, they could get up to, the maximum contribution is only $200.
Mayor, and it dropped even further.
And they can only get 1,000 people in that program, only 1,000 people in that program, right?
Even only 1,000 contributors.
Right, 1,000 contributors.
If you are able to
And-
get 1,000 who contributed the 200 and below, that qualifies you to enter the program.
Right, so if they have 1,000 that contribute 200, each of those would be $1,200. So it's still less than the 2,500, it's half of what the 2,500 is.
Correct.
Are those people also allowed to take from out of state up to 2,500 if they're in the new program? No, so if they're in the new, they have to go in the new.
They can get from out of state. However, those contributions coming
Right.
from out of state will not
Don't
count.
count. So anything that's within, people that choose the new program at maximum can only get half of what the people that choose to stay in the other program.
That's correct.
Okay.
But if you look at it broadly, those are people who will not even try to go into politics because of the same reason, money. But with this, they will be able to get a footing and make their voices heard, and you'll be surprised. The money people cannot win. Somebody like those with good ideas can easily win.
Sure, that's the theory behind it.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes.
Because we know there are very good citizens who always dream of becoming politicians one way or the other. But the limitation has always been money. Who funds make campaign? Where do I get help? So
If-
with this, we throw them right into campaign.
If they hit the $200 by 1,000 people and they get 5 times matching, can they keep getting more contributions that aren't matched?
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. But still, they're at a disadvantage in that they can only get half as much money. Okay, thank you.
One question. How much money has the city government committed for this program?
Well, city government's commitment, it's an average of the 2 election periods that, for instance, if you take the year before and the one prior to that, take the average, like how much does a mayor or mayoral race has been able to raise. So the average of those two becomes the cap during each election period when it comes to this, how much it can give up. So in fact, it's not fixed.
Do we know how, I think I understand that, do we know how much it will be allotted for next next year for the elections?
I wish I can tell you outright, but I did not. I can get back to you with that.
I'd appreciate it, just curious. I mean, my assumption is that it's actually not that much money in the grand scheme of the
Yeah, it
Card
could be
budget,
much
yeah.
depending on the election cycle and how much money has gone into politics at that time.
Yeah.
And you take the average of that too, that becomes the cap for the ensuing year that this program takes place.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So if there are 25 candidates running in any year, and they all get $200 from 1,000 contributors, the amount of money that DC would have to fund that would be $5 million.
Honestly, it's not based on how much the program contributes. It's the traditional system. They use the cap, the average of the traditional system.
No, but if there are 25 candidates running, and they each get from 1,000 contributors $200, then DC is going to have to come up with $5 million for that matching amount.
Correct.
So they have at least that $5 million put aside for this.
The city government have voted and they agreed to do it. They agreed for the money.
Okay, that takes me back. I know you said that the ANC wasn't covered, but you did mention that the State Board of Education is covered.
Correct.
So I'm just wondering the genesis behind that. Like, those are local grassroots candidates as well, and how, nonpartisan as well. And so I'm just thinking of why certain ones are covered and not. Do you find that there was a problem that you need to solve?
Yeah, I mean, it's a $100 million question, and to be honest with you, OCA, which is the Office of Community Finance, do not come out with this regulation. It is the council that came out with the law. So your concern will be shared, and we'll see what will change next time. But honestly, we were just fed with the law, and we are just following it.
One last question.
Wait.
Other commissioners have questions. Does this apply to the primary and the general election?
Yeah, primary and general.
Okay, so you would have one set of grants essentially to people for the primary, and then for those people who are successful in the primary, they could also get money in. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? On commissioners? Okay. No one has signed up to speak on this, but is there anyone who would like to speak? Okay. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing how this is going to work.
And this supplies.
Okay. Thank you. All right. The next item on the agenda is the presentation and discussion on petition and possible vote on resolution to rename Lafayette Park to Lafayette-Pointer Park. And Commissioner Madak has been the one who's been following this all along, and she's not here tonight, but I'm going to try to sit in for her. So we'll begin with an introduction by a very good group of people who have been putting together a petition and have been to a number of meetings on this. And so, Tim, are you going to be the one? Oh, Carl?
Hello everybody, good evening. My name is Carl Adjourn. I'm the president of the historic Chevy Chase ANC, and I live in the 3500 block of McKinley Street in Commissioner Mallitz's single-member district. With me tonight to help with our presentation is HCCDC's treasurer, Dick Tier, who lives in the 3100 block of Oliver Street in Commissioner Madak's single-member district. And our slide jockey tonight is Tim Panicle, who has played a central and ongoing role as a driving force in pushing this project forward. Having grown up here, he has been of inestimable value for us. Even if he's no longer living in this ANC jurisdiction, he continues to take a deep interest in the neighborhood, and his parents are still living here on Broad Branch Road. We'd like first to thank the chair and the commissioners for allowing us this opportunity to present what we think is a very important and historically significant proposal to add the name of an illustrious African-American, Captain George Pointer, to the name of Lafayette Park and Lafayette Recreation Center. We think this is a vital milestone to reconcile and acknowledge the history and contribution of the Black community that lived and thrived along Broad Branch Road from the 1830s until their homes were taken by eminent domain in 1928 to build Lafayette School and Park. We would also like to say a special thank you to Commissioner Maydak, who took the time to meet with us in person and to help us prepare for our submission and our presentation tonight. I'm sorry that you couldn't be here. One more very important thank you. James Fisher, sitting right here, is with us. James is a seventh generation descendant of Captain George Pointer. He and his partner, Tanya Hardy, have done crucial work both at the National Park Service at Great Falls to substantiate and push forward this project. So thank you, James. And thank you, Tanya. Last but definitely not least, I'd like to thank the almost 550, actually exactly 550 residents of Chevy Chase, DC, who signed our petition in favor of this proposal. During the last 3 months, historic Chevy Chase, DC embarked on a grassroots campaign to educate our neighbors about Pointer and the Broad Branch story. And we were delighted to find overwhelming support for adding the name of Captain Pointer to the Park and Recreation Center. A note on the petition. Today we submitted an additional 44 signatures that have come in the last week, with a copy to each of the commissioners. So that brings a total to 550 by our count. Each of you should have a 3-ring binder with our written submission that includes, at tab 6, all of these signatures. So now, turning to the presentation of the history, the 3 slides that Dick Tier and I will present after this one are exactly the same ones that we had blown up in posters at our various tabling events at the Lafayette Farmers Market and up on the avenue, along with much of the same explanation. I first want to emphasize the deep historical sources that we relied on here. In addition to the oral history from James Fisher and Tanya Hardy's genealogical research, the Tory and Green article represents and presents a published and extensive scholarly presentation of the history of George Pointer and his descendants on Broad Branch Road. Next, David Rotenstein's 105-page exhaustively researched evaluation of River Road Moses Cemetery has a detailed section on the Broad Branch Road Black community. And finally, the National Park Service at the Great Falls, Virginia Visitor Center has just this year installed a George Pointer exhibit that we have also drawn on. So let's first turn to the map. You can see exactly the land and the homes that are at issue here. So here's a slide that was prepared by Mr. Rotenstein from the 1919 Based Atlas, which shows the black-owned homes and land highlighted in purple. A couple of points here. We can see Broad Branch Road running north and south on the one side, and 33rd Street running north and south on the other of these properties. The acreage of the black-owned property totals to 6.17 acres, roughly half of the total 12.5 acres of the current school and park combined. We can also see the surrounding neighborhood subdivided into lots by the Chevy Chase Land Company, but with very few houses yet built. The homes and other structures appear in yellow squares. Finally, I'd like to focus on the triangle of purple highlighted land on the northern end of the area. These are the 5 lots belonging to the Moten and Harris family. The southernmost belong to Mary Moten, and the other 4 belong to her siblings. We can see that 4 of the 5 homes, the lots had homes built on them. The 5 lots totaled to just under 2.5 acres. This was the land that had been purchased in the 1840s by Mary Harris and her husband Lorenzo. Mary Harris was George Pointer's granddaughter, and she was born in 1820. She lived with her grandfather and grandmother, Captain Pointer, and his wife Elizabeth, along the shores of the Potomac River until they died in approximately 1832. Mary Harris lived into her 80s on Broad Branch Road on the family farm, or village, and she very carefully subdivided her 2.5 acres into half-acre lots for her surviving children. So at this point, let me turn things over to Dick. Would you like to continue?
My job is to talk about Captain George Pointer and to make the connection to the Broad Branch Road community. We know a lot about Captain George Pointer from an 11-page petition he wrote, dated September 5th, 1829, to the Board of Directors of the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal Company. He was asking, in fact, that his house, which was near lot number 6 on the C&O Canal, be spared. And I think it was, at least for a while.
Yeah, until it was split up.
Well, those things happen, even today. In the petition, he recounts his own history of having been born enslaved in 1773 on a plantation near Rockville, owned by a man named Wallace. And his purchase of his own freedom at the age of 19, his 40-year employment, including the supervising engineer by George Washington's Potomac Company and its successor, the C&O Canal Company. Earlier this year, as you've heard, the National Park Service at its Great Falls Visitor Center, Virginia side, erected signage to acknowledge Captain Pointer's history. It included a depiction of the 1829 letter, and I will quote here from the exhibit. Who was George Pointer? Captain George Pointer is directly quoted in this audio exhibit, unlike the other characterizations displayed here. He was one of the first enslaved laborers rented to the Potomac Canal Company at age 13. He purchased his freedom at age 19 and continued to work on the canals for 40 years. He was mostly self-educated and was the last superintendent of the Potomac Company before its charter was transferred to the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal. Great Falls Park staff is currently working with 7th-generation descendants of George Pointer to reconcile this untold story. Ask a ranger to learn more about this ongoing project. Close quote. This slide shows the new sign just installed earlier this year as a result of lobbying effort by James Fisher and Tanya Hardy. What the 1829 letter and other sources tell us is that George Pointer was a hugely accomplished person, having purchased his own freedom at the age of 19 and going on to have an extensive and successful career for this important company started by none other than George Washington. We know that Captain Pointer established himself and his family, and therefore his descendants, in freedom from enslavement. A remarkable fact given the overwhelming persistence of slavery during that time. We also know that Captain Pointer was a master of the Potomac River, so much so that when it came time to break ground for the C&O Canal in 1828, perhaps the most important public works project of the day, Captain Pointer played a large role in that groundbreaking. In fact, it was Captain Pointer who piloted the boat that carried President John Quincy Adams and his entourage up to break ground for the canal on July 4th, II. And that leads us to our final slide of the evening. This is the only picture that we know of, at least so far, of any of the homes that made up the black community on Broad Branch Road. But what a picture it is, for it brings together 100 years of the amazing history of Captain George Pointer and his descendants. The picture is from the Washington Post of June 2nd, 1928, with a fact-laden caption that reads, quote, "Canal Child. Mary Moat, 73-year-old daughter of the Mary Harris, piloted President John Quincy Adams and his party up the old Potomac Canal to the groundbreaking Chesapeake and Ohio Canal 100 years ago. She lives at 5803 Broad Branch Road, Chevy Chase." A couple of points about this photo. It accompanied an article in the Post the same day about the citizens of Georgetown and their commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the canal. The only photo related to that article is this one. Now also, Mary Harris would have been only 8 years old in 1928, so we think it's more likely that it was her grandfather, George Pointer, who did the actual piloting. But we can see that 100 years later, in 1928, the story of Mary Harris, the Mary Harris, was sufficiently well known that the Washington Post sent a staff photographer out to Chevy Chase to take this amazing picture of her daughter, Mary Moat. It was only a month or two after the picture was taken, in August 1928, that Mary Moat's home was taken by eminent domain and was demolished. Her address, 5803 Broad Branch Road, is directly opposite that section of Oliver Street that runs down from Broad Branch to the valley. I've lived in the neighborhood on and off for 52 years, and I took my own children to play in the park many times. More recently, I've taken visiting grandchildren there to play. But until the Washington History article appeared 3 years ago, I had no idea that such a community had ever existed. We're here tonight to correct the historical record and to reconcile this untold story in our own time. And we ask for the support of the ANC for this important proposal. Carl and I will be glad to take any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start. I have a couple of questions. Captain Pointer's history is really important and dramatic, and it's great that it has been preserved for all this time now, and now we have it. I'm just asking why Captain Pointer never lived on Broad Branch Road. Mary Harris did. So why, and Mary Harris's descendants then did for a century. So why is it we want to name it after Captain Pointer? Do I understand his prominence and all of that, when it was really Mary Harris and her descendants who were the residents on Broad Branch Road?
Let me take a stab at that. So we, Historic Chevy Chase, DC, are an educational NGO. And so at the top of our priority, our first mandate, is to think about how we can recover the past, essentially, how to do that best. And we had these kinds of conversations actually amongst ourselves when we were dealing with the project in its early stages. What we decided is that whatever we do would be a leading edge for people to learn more about the story. So we wanted to put something out there that was immediately identifiable. So Captain George Pointer is a figure that is known. It's true that he didn't live here, but his descendants certainly did. The thinking was that if we can get people interested in whatever way in the story of George Pointer and the entire trajectory of a man born into slavery, and giving rise to a family of freedom before the Civil War, and then successfully developing a family in our neighborhood. That would be the approach.
If I may add, some of the money, given that Harris was living with George Pointer and his wife for, as a child, very often, she was the favorite. And some of the money used by Harris and her husband, I believe, came from George Pointer. He was very resourceful and he had multiple
Actually,
items.
could I ask you to come up to the podium so that we can make sure you get on video too?
Had to put one in it, so if I get loud,
Okay,
or not too loud,
that's fine.
kind of awkward for me. I think that it was a connection financially between George Pointer and the Harris family. And it would honor him if he was a contributor, which I believe he was, to the project. You know that her husband worked on Georgetown, and he had different occupations, but it would be very difficult to save money between her and her husband. Again, I think that there's a connection between the purchase of George Pointer, of that property, between George Pointer and Harris. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And, you know, I was just thinking as you were describing all of that too, I don't know that Lafayette has any connection with Broad Branch Road either. So it shouldn't be a disqualifying factor.
If I could make an intervention just on that point, there was a connection in a very indirect way, and Lafayette certainly was connected to George Washington. And Lafayette was an exemplar of the change in that mentality among the French aristocracy that was leading edge of the French Revolution. And one of the key values of that upheaval that was taking place at the same time as ours, roughly. And certainly the Constitution came into being the same year as ours, 1789, was this notion of freedom. And he was an exponent of abolition from the very beginning.
I want to thank everyone for doing the presentation tonight. I want to thank everyone, and especially Mr. Fisher as the descendant of Captain Pointer, for attending tonight to educate us on this, because I think it's great that we learn about all individuals who have contributed to the history of not only our neighborhood, but to our country. And ironically, as a side note, I'm reading the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, the new huge book. Hopefully I finish it. That just came out, and it's interesting that you can draw parallels, because Frederick Douglass was born in 1880, and you mentioned in the presentation that in 1828, Captain Pointer was actually piloting a boat in the C&O Canal, and Frederick Douglass was just a child not too far from here. At that point, he was still in Maryland and living in Baltimore. So I find it very interesting in terms of the that to show that there were so many contributors to the building of our country, and everyone, no matter what capacity they started in, ultimately, came out and did great things. And I, just to give another perspective, I think it's wonderful when an African American family can trace their lineage back so far, because as you know, much of the history of not only African Americans but Native Americans is disjoined in this country, and even some of the indentured servants. I could go on, I love history, but I won't take your time. So I just wonder what are your plans for the future? What type of educational pieces will you add to this? And just a little bit more about that. Thank you.
So we like to think of ourselves as the memory of the community. It's our brand, more or less. And so it's our business to get to the bottom of these things and to recover this history the best way we can. And of course, we're thinking about next steps as well. And we're hoping, among other things, in the renovation that's going on of the Park and Recreation Center, that some small amount will be set aside for signage. Signage is the first step toward creating resources and tools that can be used. Now, the signage will be right next door to Lafayette School, and that presents itself, as an obvious resource for the kids at that school, and through the parents and through the Parents Teachers Association and so forth. We hope to have those kinds of conversations. So we have been thinking about it. The organization continues, as long as the organization is there, we'll continue to dig into the history and find out what we can. We're all involved by the way. I should just to add a footnote. Our organization was founded in 1990. In 1999, a book was published by us called Lafayette Life. And my predecessor, Bill Hopper, wrote the preface to that book. And in the preface to that book, there are 2 lines about this story. And it was reading those 2 lines approximately 8 or 9 or 10 years ago that got me intrigued. And then the rest of us became intrigued by the story. And that was the seed for our standing before you today, 550 neighbors' signatures on the petition.
If I may add, my personal ultimate goal is to have an exhibit of Captain George Pointer and his story told International African American Museum. My family was in the, Harris had 2 sons that were first in line also to serve in D.C., to serve in the Civil War. They both survived and returned back to the farm. When I first visited the museum up in Great Falls, I saw the depiction of George Pointer with no name. They knew his name. They knew who he was. But to the millions of visitors up there, he was just a fictitious character in an exhibit. It upset me so that I pushed to have his exhibit as it is now. The pushback takes a part of me. Each time I see people knowing will continue to hide his name. It's an American story. It's one that everyone should know and be encouraged by. Especially we all, but children. I met with a woman who wants to write a book, a children's book about George Pointer 2 weeks ago. There is a book also may be published by Georgetown University that contains his story, but not only his story, other enslaved or freed blacks during slavery. And so there are many outgrowths from my venture into learning more about my family tree. It's a 10-year quest. I wouldn't be here if I did not have the support, especially from Tim and a whole lot of others that were surprised and felt the same, that his story should be told. So I'm using every avenue as possible to get his story told, my family's story told out here. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Just a couple of questions. One, I just want to make sure I'm right. So, Marianne Plummer Harris is the third generation, correct? Okay. And to follow up on the statement that Shonda made, the further historical context of all this, so you are planning to look into whether it's plaques or displays or signs throughout the area that identify different things, is that correct?
Yes, I would say so.
I'd like to say one other thing. Lafayette Harris Park was my compromise. I would like to say Pointer Park.
Oh, I wasn't recommending change. I was just...
I just, I wanted to put that out there.
Okay, no.
If I could just add, I'm Chip Hannibal, and I've been working with Historic Chevy Chase DC. Just so you know, actually this project started over a year ago with Historic Chevy Chase DC and a working group proposing to DC Parks and Rec for historical signage as part of a rec center renovation. And we think that there's been preliminary approval of that. And what that would be a specification of the contract for the subcontract, for a contractor or subcontractor to include that historical signage, which we would hope would be part of a community engagement process. And just to Chair Speck's point about why Pointer, I think it's been amply explained, but it was Captain George Pointer who established the family and freedom. What he did was remarkable for that time, that he had a master who allowed him to set aside money, and that he was able to purchase his own freedom at the age of 19 for the entire family for generations to come, well beyond the Civil War. And he was actually, Captain Pointer was a contemporary of Washington, George Washington. He speaks in the letter about how he would meet General Washington every October when the general would come. He spoke of him as the general, of course, because that's how we met him in 1785. When the general would come to each squad of workmen at the canal and give $1 or $2. So in that way, Lafayette and Pointer were both contemporaries of George Washington. So, thank you.
And the last part of my question, I know you identified one picture that was in the Washington Post from 1928. I assume you've checked with the Post if they have any other photos from that photo session. And additionally, if the Post doesn't have them, you might want to do some background checking on the photographer that had them and see if descendants of that photographer might be in possession of some things. I don't know if you've done that already, but I know a similar situation, not like this, but in historical research, somebody that I know ended up tracking down the family of the photographer, and they were able to get things that were never published.
Fantastic idea. I hadn't thought of that, the last part of that, but certainly our interest will persist in this.
Okay, Abe?
I want to make this move on. Just one procedural question. You're requesting from DPR the signage, and our resolution would support that request? No.
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 The resolution is only to the council, and it is not related to signage. It doesn't include signage. And I will point out there too, I do want to keep those two issues separate, because For one thing, I'm concerned that money that's been appropriated for the rec center and for the stormwater management is not going to be enough as it is, and I'm concerned that we need to make sure that that money gets spent the way it's proposed to be spent. I would support a separate appropriation. Probably won't come up until next year anyway, next fiscal year. And so I think we would probably support that, but I want to keep the two separate at this point because I don't want to detract from, they're taking a long time to get started on this modernization of the rec center. I don't want to slow that down. I don't want to knock it off the rails at this point because there's not enough money. So let's just keep those two separate for right now. Okay?
But our resolution would support a name change. That's
Yes.
a recommendation to the
Yes.
council, because
Yes.
the council has to weigh in on that.
Well, it's actually more significant than that. The council has to pass legislation that would rename the park
Got it.
because it requires council action.
Okay. I just want to say that I support what you're trying to do, and I also share Randy, Commissioner Speck's concerns about the project that's already in motion. I also just want to say that research and information has just been very educational for me. And so to the extent that your mission is about education, I really value the education that I've received in learning about this. And I would really request that if it's not already available online, that all of this be made available online. If you could actually just send me the link, I'd like to include it all in our minutes so that other people can read everything that you've done. It's really remarkable. So thank you.
Thanks. Most of it is online. The Rotenstein piece is definitely online, and it's free. You can download it from our website.
Sure.
Just Google Historic Chevy Chase DC. It's all there.
Thank you.
This is great also, and since you're going to take this to council, have you already approached the council, such as Councilmember Todd or our at-large council members to gather their support of this project?
You might be interested to know that actually this suggestion for adding the name came from Dolly Turner, who was Brandon Todd's Deputy Chief of Staff at one of the rec center engagement meetings. And yes, a group of us, James and Tanya, and a group of us have met with Councilmember Brandon Todd, and he's indicated that he would support this once it comes from the ANC. He would support legislation.
Okay. No one has signed up, I think, to speak on this issue. Anyone want to speak? Alan? I'm going to ask you, Alan, to come up to the microphone like everyone else. Sorry.
For the record, can you hear me okay? For the record, I'm Alan Beach, a former commissioner. My question is, do you have any information as to whether George Pointer ever was on that property on the Lafayette Farm area? What was the first person of his descendants who actually even walked on the property, not necessarily lived? Do you have that information?
Was this Brandon?
The grandmother.
Yeah, we're pretty sure it is Brenda. No one thinks that George Pointer was there. He died in, we think, in 1832, and never got very far from the river.
Okay. In the absence of Commissioner Madak, Lafayette Park is in her single-member district, I will make the motion that we support a resolution. And they've given us a draft resolution. I have gone through it and have cleaned it up and put it in our format and some other things too, and I'll circulate it to the other commissioners. But I would make a motion that we support that resolution to the council to change the name from Lafayette Park and Lafayette Recreation Center to Lafayette-Pointer Park and Lafayette-Pointer Recreation Center. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? 4-0. Okay, thank you. Thank you all for all the work that you did on this, and for it's clearly a labor of love, and we appreciate the efforts that you put forth on this and educating all of us. Okay, the next item on our agenda, and if you're going to leave now, please do so quietly. We've got several other issues that we still have to address. Our electric utility, Pepco, has filed a request for a rate increase with the Public Service Commission. And they've asked to come and meet with us today to present their proposal. And as I understand it, this can be a little bit different from the kind of proposals that they've had in rate increases in the past. And so we're very anxious to hear it, especially in light of the fact that the Public Utility Commission is in the midst of a substantial process to talk about what the electric system in the district ought to look like in the future. So we're interested in how that's going to play out. And I've also invited as well the Office of People's Counsel to come and tell us their perspective on this, although we know that this is still in a relatively early stage in the process of looking at this rate increase. We'd like to know from the People's Counsel what their thoughts are about it as well. So we'll begin. Mark, you want to start the presentation from Pepco?
Sure, thank you very much. Chairman Speck, Commissioners, for having us here this evening. Again, my name is Mark Battle. I'm Pepco's Regional Vice President, and we've been here many times before to talk about rate adjustments, Pepco merger, and other issues, and we appreciate having the opportunity to be back. I'm joined by the Pepco Regional President, Malcolm Cooper, sitting right here, along with a number of my colleagues and my daughter who's fighting to stay awake, so I'm trying to do this up here.
That doesn't go faster than that.
Yes, so, and my colleague Eric is handing out some fact sheets, and the commissioners, you also have a PowerPoint. Since we're not using an audio visual system, I'm not going to go straight to the PowerPoint because it's not that helpful for the audience. I'll kind of deviate from it a bit, but also have to take any questions from that information, from fact sheets or anything else that anyone comes up with. So by way of just quick background, Pepco is, of course, the electric utility serving Washington, D.C. and suburban Maryland. We serve approximately 360,000 customers, and by customers, we technically just mean meters. Of course, there are nearly 700,000 district residents, all of whom are customers, as well as the businesses and visitors who come to the district. We are a wires-only company. What does that mean? It means we don't generate electricity anymore. Many years ago, we had power plants out on Benny Road and Westwood Point where we generated electricity through coal-fired plants. But we sold off that generation many years ago. And so now we focus exclusively on the distribution of electricity. And so when we talk about a rate increase and what the Public Service Commission regulates and what OPC will talk about is the distribution portion of your bill. And generally, that's about 20% of the average customer's bill is the distribution charge. So the proposed rate increases, as Chairman Speck mentioned, is a little bit different this go-around because we're proposing a multi-year plan. And so first I'll say what the proposed increase is in the aggregate. It's about $162 million to cover a 5-year period. Covering 5 years from 2018 to 2022. And the customer impact, the residential customer impact, starting in 2020 will be about $8.50 per month. Now there will be a reduction in the energy portion of the bill in 2020 of about $2.50. So the actual impact is really about $6.09 for 2020. And then $3.69 for 2021 and $3.19 for 2022. That's assuming that the Public Service Commission were to award the full request as we've presented it. As an aside, because Pepco only charges the distribution costs on your bill, low-income customers who qualify for what's called the Residential Aid Discount Program do not pay that distribution charge at all. And so those qualified low-income customers will not be affected at all by whatever increase that the Public Service Commission awards, if any. So moving to the rationale for a multi-year plan. The traditional method of company will spend money on investments and infrastructure and maintenance and things that just need to be done. And then we'll come back to the commission a year or two later, present all the things that we spent, and make arguments about why we should be able to seek cost recovery for those investments. Office of People's Counsel, district government, other parties will intervene, and this is a full-blown legal case, and they will make arguments about why we shouldn't be able to recover portions of what we've requested. You know, maybe you didn't need to build that, or you didn't have to spend that much money. You could have done it a different way. That's a traditional way of rate making. What we're proposing now in a multi-year plan is a forward-looking plan where instead of us coming in and arguing about things we did in the past, we have a more collaborative and transparent process up front with the commission, with all the stakeholders, where we're kind of, again, in collaboration, really planning out what the investments need to be looking forward. And that's also going to help us better align our investments with the district government's priorities, or the district's priorities, not just the district government. When I say priorities, I'm thinking about a lot of the clean energy initiatives and things that require some changes to the way energy is delivered and consumed in the district. And so a forward-looking approach will help in that planning process. Another, I think, benefit to this, or I should say, there's no downside in terms of the accountability to our customers through the oversight of the Public Service Commission and People's Counsel. The mission of the Public Service Commission, among other things, is to ensure that rates are at all times just and reasonable. Is that right? Right? Just and reasonable rates at all times. That does not change at all. So no matter what the formulation, whether it's a traditional backward-looking rate case or forward-looking, their mission doesn't change. The mission of People's Counsel is, of course, to advocate for the rights of residential customers, and so that will not change at all. And so all those parties will still play their very, very important roles. One thing I would say, a benefit to a forward-looking and a multi-year rate plan is predictability. When I say predictability, that's a benefit to both the utility and to customers. Because people would ask, you know, why is Pepco doing it? It has to be in your interest to do it. Well, of course it is. It's in our interest as a company to have some advanced sense of what our revenue and exposure, financial exposure is going to be. Any company wants to have that. The stock market always takes a dip when there's uncertainty in the markets. For customers, like all of us, being able to plan out our budgets, looking forward, just makes sense. So predictability helps both customers as well as the utility. And there's also a component of traditional rate making that actually costs more than what this process will be, and that has to do with the sheer litigation. When we argue traditional rate cases, they are, again, full-blown legal cases that take about a year, and on average, about $3 million is spent on lawyers between utility, People's Counsel, not just with lawyers and expert witnesses. So that's $3 million that will not be spent in all that protracted litigation if we're doing it in a forward-looking way. So let me talk about some of the investments that we've made, which kind of justifies and necessitates the request. In 2018 alone, the company made $166 million in investments to upgrade the system, the electric system. You know, what does that look like? It looks like approximately 900 solar energy projects that were connected. We're talking about trimming trees, 252 miles of trimming trees on distribution lines. We're talking about inspecting more than 10,000 manholes, 2,000 transformers. There's a lot of things that go into the money that we spent. People often ask, why do our bills need to go up? That's a question I get all the time. And there's a few basic reasons. One, I think, is obvious to all of us. The district is growing very, very quickly. And with that growth, upgrades are needed. And when I say growth, in certain areas of the city, you have actual physical, brand new especially like in wards 5, 2, and 6 in particular. So people are living in places where people never lived before. And anytime development is planned where people are going to live or businesses are going to be, Pepco and other utilities have to be there in advance. We have to be there and have the infrastructure that's ready for people or businesses when they need it. It can't be that they build the houses and then they say, okay, Pepco, we need electricity. No, we have to track it and be there in advance. And there's a lot of that going on. You have other areas of the city where you're experiencing growth in a different way, and it's more like corridors where you have a lot of traditional single-family homes that are being redeveloped into multi-family units. So now you're talking about the load of the system is being impacted because, years ago, my grandparents had their homes in Northeast and Northwest, and one family lived there. Similar homes now have 4 different families. And so, 4 washing machines and 4 refrigerators and all the different things that go along with that. So there's load considerations even in neighborhoods that aren't really physically expanding their boundaries. Another aspect of the need for investment, ironically enough, is the move to more renewable energy. It seems kind of counterintuitive because a lot of people think about, well, I'm going to get solar panels, I'm going to get off the grid, get off the grid. And the reality of that is that every customer that interconnects their solar array, or if it's a community solar project, those systems are connected into Pepco's electrical grid, and the excess energy, whatever the customer does not use, whatever they don't consume, flows back into Pepco's electrical grid. So whereas in the past we had basically a one-way system and we're pushing electricity out, people are using it, now you have a lot of what we call distributed energy resources. So energy resources that are distributed around the city, usually solar arrays, that are generating power, and that power has to go somewhere. And the reason customers are interconnected is because they are paid for the excess energy that they generate, and what they are paid is actually what makes it financially viable or even lucrative in some cases for them to invest in solar arrays. And so now you have a system where instead of, you used to have a one-way street of electricity, now it's a two-way. And so that requires us to invest in, larger conduit, newer conduit, in ways that we just didn't have to before when we didn't have those distributed energy resources. So I think I've covered quite a bit. I think I'll probably stop right there and take questions if that makes sense.
Okay. I have one question, Mark. As you well know, there's been a lengthy proceeding at the Public Service Commission about what's loosely called the grid of the future, how we're going to accommodate new energy resources and how we're going to do that most efficiently and most effectively. And also there's one component of that was looking at rate structures and how we could improve the rate structures. How does what you're proposing here fit in with what the Public Service Commission is doing right now? They haven't concluded that proceeding. They're still in the process of looking at it. But how will that mesh with your proposed rate increase?
So that's a very good question. So it meshes nicely in a couple of ways. I think the most important one has to do with the distribution planning methodology. There's a lot of concern, and this is the Mensis proceeding that's been before the Commission for quite some time. Too long, very long. And what we've heard loud and clear is that, and what we've known for a long time is customers want to be more engaged in how they get their electricity and how things are used and how they're formed and all that. So what Pepco has proposed as part of that Mensis process is a more collaborative distribution planning process, and that goes with the plan. You can't have a collaborative planning process for investments that you made 5 years ago. And so they do really go hand in hand. I had a second one, it's just left in just like quickly. I will say also that one component I didn't really talk about our proposal, there's a number of performance metrics that we're proposing, where if we don't meet those metrics, there will be a penalty, a financial penalty to the company. The metrics measure reliability, customer satisfaction, and the rate of distributed energy resources. So again, if folks are concerned that Pepco isn't aggressive enough in interconnecting solar arrays and all that, that's a performance metric that we would get dinged on if we were not performing highly in that area. One difference between the penalties associated with these performance metrics and penalties that are already, I guess, allowed for in current law is, and then there are reliability penalties that could be levied on Pepco if we are not meeting our reliability targets in terms of the number of outages and frequency, the duration of outages and frequency of outages. And the difference here is that customers would actually see a decrease in their rates if we weren't meeting these targets, as opposed to traditional penalties where you just pay fines to the government and who knows where that money goes.
What, if any, is the relationship with the work being undertaken via DC plug and the proposed rate increases, especially if the areas for DC plug grow in the near future to other areas? And one of the reasons that's being done is to reduce potential outages and things like that.
So the relationship is that DC plug is being paid for by surcharges that are on customer bills. The current rate proposal doesn't contemplate the DC plug charges, but that's already been kind of baked into customer rates now. So that's a separate proceeding before the Public Service Commission, and actually not just before the Public Service Commission, but with the Public Service Commission as a partner, along with OPC and many others. So that's a current charge that's on bills. That's not part of what we're requesting here. Did that answer your question?
The work being done on DC plug, at least the construction of it, isn't that being done by DDOT?
So it's a partnership between DDOT and Pepco. So DDOT is doing the road work, the trenching work, and Pepco is doing the electrical work. So basically DDOT is going in and digging trenches along the areas where we'll be burying certain of the overhead power lines, not all of them, but some of the most vulnerable feeders in wards 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. And so they do the trenches, Pepco comes along, puts transformers and the power lines underground. DDOT comes along and patches the road, so that's what the partnership is.
Those rate increases are already being taken care of, and this is in addition to that.
That's already factored into current rates. Correct.
Thank you for presenting on this. One thing is, this is new to me, so I'll just speak for myself, but it's helpful to have this sort of information before the meeting, just the presentation and the flyers. That would allow us to read it through and then be able to ask some questions. And I think I've done my best to follow along, but also sort of glancing at this, and so if I was able to do it before.
Absolutely, I appreciate that, and we're happy to come back at a future meeting once you've digested everything. And,
I'm certain that will happen.
Thank you for coming, first of all, to educate us on this, and great. So it's a little bit earlier, so we can have that. I know it's an ongoing process and a long process. As you know, our community has a large number of senior citizens, and I know you mentioned that the low-income residents in the district will not be affected by this rate increase.
definite, benefits to customers, benefits that have been received in terms of greater reliability. Those of you who've been in the district for more than probably 5 or 6 years, I think can attest to the fact that Pepco's reliability has increased dramatically. I think we're in the top 10% now in terms of national reliability. And that does come at a cost. Nothing can be done better without constant investment. Along with that, there are reliability requirements that were set by the Public Service Commission. Ones I mentioned earlier where if we don't meet them, we'll be fine. And we are required to get better and better and better year over year. And at a certain point now, there'll never be a point where you just have no allergies whatsoever. That's just not physically possible. But at least for now, we are expected and we are required to increase our reliability in terms of lowering the duration and the frequency of outages year over year. And again, there's nothing that one can do in life where you get progressively better, where you're not making some level of investment. So customers are the direct beneficiaries of that. A lot of people, when we were having excuse me, outages more frequently than we would have liked some years ago, and any outages more frequently than we like, people were very quick to assess a financial, value to that, or say, outages cost us this, and that's true. And reliability works the other way. Enhanced reliability is something that benefits all of us, residents, businesses as well. There is a, thank you. There, I haven't seen them all. I've never seen them. So seniors are like all of our customers, a population that we care quite a bit about, but there's been a lot of focus on how to make sure, because like you said, folks are on fixed incomes and they're not getting raises and things like that that can necessarily offset increases in bills. And so there is a senior rate that we've been working on with the Public Service Commission that's not in effect yet, is it?
It's not in effect yet. That's going through the process. It should be in effect. So
yes. So that's something. And so I'll say the Public Service Commission, also the People's Counsel, has been heavily involved in working on that senior rate for just the reasons that you spoke about.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much. We want to hear from the Office of People's Counsel as well. We had expected to have the Consumer Utility Board represented today too. They couldn't make it at the last minute, but maybe we'll hear from them at a later point. Ms. Patel?
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners, and members of ANC 34G, is that correct? My name is Anjali Patel, and I'm the lead attorney for the Office of People's Counsel on the Pepco rate case. On behalf of the People's Counsel and Ms. Sandra Mano-Fry, I would like to thank you for inviting OPC to speak on this important topic. For those of you who are not familiar with our office, our mission is to advocate for electric service that is safe, reliable, resilient, and environmentally sustainable on behalf of all DC district ratepayers and consumers. OPC has been and continues to be fully supportive of the district's environmental goals and policies, but believes that it's important that we consider how best to achieve these goals and policies in a manner that is cost-effective, that brings benefits to all 8 wards of the city. Pepco, as Mr. Battle mentioned, Pepco routinely files for rate increases, but this application is different in that Pepco is not just asking for a rate increase, it's also asking the Public Service Commission to change the way it sets Pepco's rates. Traditionally, Pepco must come in to ask each time it wants a rate increase, and this provides our office, as well as other stakeholders, an opportunity to review the inputs and ensure that the costs, as Mr. Battle also mentioned, are just and reasonable for ratepayers to pay. These rate cases are important. They do incur litigation costs, but they're an important way to ensure that Pepco's requests are reasonable. Over the last several rate cases, based on OPC's advocacy on behalf of ratepayers and other stakeholders' advocacy efforts, the PSC has approved rates that are generally less than half of what Pepco has asked for. In the last litigated rate case, Pepco asked for $85.5 million and was granted a $36.9 million increase, so the rate cases are important. Under the multi-year rate plan, Pepco is asking the Commission to approve 3 successive rate cases totaling $162 million. We're reviewing the application carefully to ensure that the new rate design will not harm consumers, will produce actual benefits for consumers, will advance the district's environmental goals, and will result in just and reasonable rates. There are utilities in other jurisdictions that have been using multi-year rate plans, but the devil is always in the details. And because we're reviewing the application, we have not yet taken a position, but there are a few points we want to raise for your consideration tonight as potential issues that your Commission may be interested in exploring further. So first, in traditional rate cases, the costs that are used to develop Pepco's rates are partially known. Under the multi-year rate plan, Pepco has proposed to set its rates based on forecasted budgets. If the budgets are too high, this could cause ratepayers to pay more for their electric service than they really should be paying. In past rate cases, Pepco's forecasts have not been accurate, which has played a part in the PSC's orders authorizing a rate increase lower than what Pepco has requested. So OPC is examining the application carefully to see how Pepco has addressed forecasting in its current application. And while Pepco's improved performance is always something we want to achieve, performance incentive mechanisms need to be reviewed carefully to make sure that they are designed to provide additional benefits to ratepayers beyond the safe and reliable service that Pepco is required to provide and that ratepayers are already paying for with their rates. Third, rate making is an evolving field, and the district is not in the Stone Age in terms of alternative rate making. The PSC has developed several mechanisms over the years to address challenges raised under traditional rate making mechanisms. For example, the Commission has authorized Pepco to implement a decoupling mechanism which helps avoid potential disincentives to invest in energy efficiency. We know energy efficiency is important in the district. PSC is also authorized, I think that DC plug was raised before, it's authorized Pepco to institute a surcharge for undergrounding lines so it does not need to wait to recoup money for this investment. Pepco's been collecting the surcharge even though the work is just starting on that project. And as we look forward, there may be further changes that are warranted, but we want to make sure they're the right changes, not changes that result in negative impacts for ratepayers. If the PSC does not approve the multi-year rate plan, Pepco is asking the alternative for a rate increase of $88.6 million. Both of these numbers under the multi-year rate plan and the traditional rate case, they're huge numbers, and we want to make sure that whatever the request is that is approved is just and reasonable. Again, those magic words keep coming back, but they're just and reasonable. And we're also reviewing the request to make sure that customers are only charged for costs necessary to provide electric distribution service. As Mr. Battle explained, Pepco is a wires-only company, so we want to make sure there aren't costs related to other parts of keeping our lights on that Pepco is not responsible for. The PSC has not yet issued a procedural schedule in the case. They're considering whether to split it into multiple proceedings or to phase the proceeding. Their parties did meet to discuss the schedule. There was no consensus, so we're waiting on a commission order to see how to proceed. We encourage this commission, as well as members of the public, to continue to stay involved in the case. OPC is your utility lawyer, so if you have questions, please contact us. If you have concerns or issues or thoughts about Pepco's application that you want to raise, please also contact us with those and contact the commission. They want to hear from the public on what you think of Pepco's rate application. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for mentioning the procedural schedule too, because that's really important from our standpoint. We would like to participate in that process as part of the public. And I know typically there is an opportunity for public comment. And if you could sort of put a trigger on and advise us to make sure that we're alerted to that as to what the procedural schedule is going to look like. And I know that this is frequently protracted proceeding. It's going to take a long time. But if you can just keep us apprised of it, that would be very helpful.
We'd be happy to circulate that once it comes through.
Shannon?
I'm just wondering, I've been following.
Too much not on.
Oh, sorry. I've been following this Maryland, DC, and Virginia that Pepco is servicing. So are the rate increase requests different based on the area? Like, for instance, and I may have seen an incorrect article, but it seems like the amount of the rate increase in Maryland is less than the amount of the rate increase in DC. So,
I don't know about the amount. Mark will have to address that, but
On the amount, like I said, Mark, please. For the benefit of our video.
they are separate rate increase requests though, because we have different commissions.
Commissions and public service they have to go through. So just for, I guess, our clarification in terms of that, with dealing with Maryland, the district, and Virginia. And I know you have different work that you perform, different services. So I'm just wondering, I read an article that the request in Maryland is lower than the request in the district. I mean, that may not be true. I mean, maybe my source is correct, but I just wanted to see.
So I can double check.
How does that?
Just to clarify, we don't serve Virginia at all, so.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So
Yes,
for
right.
Maryland, we serve most of Montgomery County
Yes.
and Prince George's County. I can get back to you on the exact numbers, and I don't know if it's a matter of if there's a traditional rate case file in Maryland versus a multi-year in the district, but it depends on the work that's being done. The commissions have different mandates around a lot of different things, and so there's really no cross subsidization of any costs. So our rate case for DC is strictly for being done in DC, opposed to Maryland. It's just what's happening in Maryland.
Yes.
But we can get back to you on.
Yes, no, this is very educational for us because, as a grassroots and representing the community, we're not only the customers, but we're also, the commission and representing our constituents. So I guess just to know more about like that piece of it and that process is helpful as well.
We'll follow up.
Okay.
Here?
Two questions. The first one, when a company comes to you for a long-term, 3-year plan, are they allowed to come back and renegotiate within that 3-year period?
That's a good question. So again, it depends on how the plan is designed. It's my understanding, and Pepco can correct me on this, that their application includes a reopener for specific circumstances, but I don't know all of those off the top of my head. The way that a multi-year rate plan is generally, when people talk about a multi-year rate plan, they're talking about a plan that's set that the company doesn't come back and get to renegotiate its rates. There have been instances in other jurisdictions where we may want a renegotiation as consumers. So the federal government passed the Tax Cut and Jobs Act a couple years ago, which lowered the tax rate for companies, and that would have provided a benefit to consumers. But there's other circumstances where where companies may say, hey, we did this wrong and we need more money. That's, in our perspective, is probably not the right reason to open a plan up, but it depends on the circumstances.
So there's no guarantee, but you've seen these things before.
There's no guarantee. There's some plans that say you can't open them, and there's some plans that say you can open them. So it will depend on what the commission decides, if they decide a multi-year rate plan is appropriate.
My second question, the last bullet point you have on here, you mentioned that 35% of the revenue distribution would be allocated to residential customers. So I assume that the other categories are district, DC government customer, a federal government customer, and then businesses, nonprofit and profit, are they rated differently?
There's commercial classes, there's master meter departments. I'm looking at Pepco because I don't know all the tariff schedules off the top of my head. There's residential. WMATA has its own rate tariff, as my understanding. So there's multiple different tariffs that are there and different, which we call rate classes.
So chances are that the residential is the greatest amount of any of those.
Well, so the history of residential tariffs is long. Residential tariffs have, and Pepco's you've been under-earning, they haven't been contributing as much to Pepco's revenue as that the commission has authorized the class to contribute. So when Pepco proposed that, they're looking at the contributions of the different classes. That's not set in stone. That is how Pepco has proposed that the rates be distributed.
And that's based on usage, I guess.
The rates are based, it's a tariff, that's a kilowatt hour tariff. And then there's also there's both a usage and a set tariff, a set charge. So it depends on, part of your charge is set and part of it's based on usage.
And just to elaborate a little bit, so generally speaking, the rate classes are residential, commercial, residential and commercial, and then government rates are kind of mixed in with commercial, and there's several different residential rates. But in no instance are residential customers paying the bulk of any increase. As was noted, residential customers actually pay less than the cost of service. And that's a complicated formulation that, there's always a big fight during the rate cases between, some of the advocates for the commercial customers and residential customers on how they'll be allocated. But in no instance are residential customers paying the bulk. And that's not in our proposal.
One question though, Mark. I know the commission has stated in the past that they wanted to make residential customers pay more of their share, their equitable share, and that was an objective over a long run. Does this proposed rate increase the amount proportionally that residential customers pay compared with commercial customers?
I do not believe it does. It increases that, so it still gets it closer to zero?
It's aimed at
Still closing that gap?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why, yeah.
Okay.
So that's why it's 36%.
Right.
It was, the straight math based on Pepco's application is lower for residents.
All right. Okay. That's helpful. I spent many decades of my life working on rate cases and things like this. I'm very familiar with it, and I know this is a complex issue, but that too is an important factor to be considered in how much residential customers are paying versus commercial customers. Okay, anyone in the audience have any questions they'd like to ask? Comments they'd like to make? Okay, we're very grateful both for OPC to come out and for Pepco to come out, and Donna, we appreciate your being here. That's an honor to have you with us. As I said, I've been through the ringer on these rate cases many times. I know exactly what you're going through. It's a complex process, but please do keep us informed. Our commission has in the past weighed in with the Public Service Commission on issues that come before it, and we would certainly want to do that again, I think. And that would probably mean we'd want you to come back at a later point when the issues are more crystallized and we know a little bit better what's going on. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a proposal that Commissioner Mallitz has made to support Mayor Bowser's statement on President Trump's threat to arrest and remove immigrant residents. Jerry, you want to describe the resolution?
Sure. It's fairly straightforward. On June 21st, which was right before the threat for the initial ICE raids were supposed to take place, which was postponed for a couple of weeks for some reason, Mayor Bowser, along with mayors of many other cities across the country, came out with statements obviously against this roundup and deportation of immigrants. And as in part, her statement read, Washington, D.C. remains a proud sanctuary city, and we are committed to protecting the rights of all our immigrant families in the face of these disturbing threats. Her statement went on to mention some of the things that DC currently does for immigrant families, and even though DC is not one of the 10 cities mentioned as being the initial focus of these roundups, it nevertheless remains to be seen if it's not going to be included in the future, especially since Baltimore is one of them. So this resolution is really geared for our ANC to support the statement that Mayor Bowser made, and hopefully maybe get other ANCs around the city to also support this.
Okay, is there a second to Jerry's motion for this resolution? Second. All those in favor? 4-0. I forgot to ask whether there's any discussion. I don't think there was. Okay, yeah, thank you, Jerry, for putting that together, because I do think this is an important issue for the district and for the country, and that we should weigh in on it as well. Okay, the last, Tim Walsh did not get here, did he? Okay. We'll postpone the consideration of the liquor license renewal application for Arugula until our meeting on July 22nd. Okay, the next item on the commission business is approval of our minutes, which were for the June 24th, 2019 meeting. Those were published on our website on various listservs that serve our community. Any modifications or changes to minutes? All those in favor of approving the minutes? 4-0. Okay. Treasurer, Chanda, you want to report?
Okay, as per Alan and Stephanie, we have 2 checks this evening. First for $404.83 for the U.S. Treasury, federal tax withheld, and the second one for $47.63 for DOES, unemployment for April through June. Anything else? Alan or Stephanie that make it this evening? Okay, and that's it.
All those in favor of approving those checks? 4-0. Okay, and receipt of quarterly allotment?
Yes. Yes, as reported, via Alan, we received our quarterly allotment of $3,977.96.
Which is exactly what we were owed. Okay, the items for our July 22nd meeting may include the following. First, there's a tribute that the mayor has, I think, authored for Northwest Current publisher Davis Kennedy, who published the Current for many, many, many years, and we missed the Current. The second item is discussion and possible vote on a resolution urging the council to make provisions for infrastructure improvements in the comprehensive plan. As you may have seen, the comprehensive plan is now before the council again after about a year or more since they held hearings. And this is just the framework element of the comprehensive plan, but they've made a number of modifications, and they addressed some of the concerns that the commission expressed in its testimony before the council, and other issues they did not address. The first vote on that modified framework element of the comprehensive plan is tomorrow, after releasing it only a week before the vote. However, there will be a second vote in September, and that's really the one that's going to mean anything. I suspect there are going to be some amendments that are going to be proposed to the council in the markup tomorrow, and we'll see what that looks like. But our inclination right now is to look at that issue and decide whether we may want to file a resolution at our July 22nd meeting. We'll also have a presentation by Andrew Reese, who is the director of the district's Department of Disability Services, on what's been recently publicized in an article in the Post about the department's termination of its disability services contract with Georgetown University. And that has a significant effect on the disabled community in the district. And we want to hear from the director why that contract was terminated, and decide whether there's any resolution that would be appropriate. We also have a quarterly report, which we'll take up at our next meeting as well, and we have to pass our quarterly report. And finally, we'll, as I mentioned a minute ago, we'll hear the liquor license renewal application for Arugula. Anything else, commission business? Okay, we'll adjourn. Oh, one more thing.
One question to help facilitate speakers who want to come before the commission, particularly if there's an issue where there's a lot of speakers. I'd like to propose that we spend no more than $75 to purchase a whiteboard and stand, and they basically go right there. And so rather than people signing up in the back, they would just sign up on the whiteboard, and that way they'd be able to see people sign up as they're signing up kind of in real time, and not have the kind of fetching of the paper back and forth. And I think that could help facilitate people speaking at a reasonable cost. So what does people think about that?
Could we also then use the whiteboard for our own good?
Sure. I don't see why not.
I love whiteboards.
If it's our whiteboard,
Well,
do what we want with it.
the only thing, Stephanie, could you just check with the office here and see if they have a whiteboard? I doubt that they do, but if we don't have to make an investment of that, we shouldn't. But let's find out whether they have a whiteboard, and if not, we'll put that on the agenda for next meeting, so we'll decide it then.
Yeah, let's see if we've got one.
Be stored, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, we have to have a storage place because our office is not sufficient for that.
Might be in my trunk, but that would be okay. But yeah, let's see if we look. So if they don't have one, we can maybe talk about it next time.
Right.
Go whiteboard.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned.